So hello guys, good afternoon. I hope you are doing great, guys, and I hope you are safe during this crazy pandemic. In today's vlog, guys, in today's video, I would like to talk about some of my experiences that I had traveling to different countries. Some of the experiences that I have or that I had with the immigration departments of different countries when I actually arrived in respective countries, airports actually. So, having traveled to 8 countries multiple times to some of them, or probably all of them, I've actually had lots of different interesting encounters with with the immigration officers in that respective country or countries that I've visited so far. Actually, in terms of the strictness, right, of immigration departments of different countries that I've visited, I would place the Philippines at number one in terms of strictness. Yes, it might come as a surprise. Yes, Philippines is actually a developing country. Yes, but that was actually the country that kind of questioned me the most upon arrival at their airport in Manila. I was surprised. Yeah, pleasantly surprised. But that's what it is, right? So coming at place number 2, I would put Singapore immigration as the second most stringent or second most strictest immigrations of all countries that I've visited, right? So by the way, let's go through the countries that I've been to, right? So the 8 countries that I've been to are South Korea. I've been to South Korea twice. I've been to the United Arab Emirates twice. I think twice or 3 times. I think twice. I lived in the UAE in Dubai for months last year because of the pandemic, and I also had previously visited the United Arab Emirates the year earlier before that in 2019. So South Korea, United Arab Emirates, Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, Philippines, China, Kazakhstan. I think that's 8. I think, yeah. So I would say the easiest immigration that I've ever had to deal with was probably surprisingly in the United Arab Emirates. Actually, that's one of the richest countries on earth, but that was actually surprisingly was the easiest to deal with. I had no problems whatsoever when I arrived at the Dubai International Airport. I just presented my documents. Here you go. They're like, boom, welcome to the UAE. I'm like, holy cow, no questions asked, mate. So the second strictest immigration departments that I've had to deal with was Singapore. Probably after Singapore would be Malaysia, yeah. And then I would put probably Kazakhstan's immigration, the immigration of Kazakhstan, the next, and then that would be probably after that. Oh yeah. By the way, Singapore immigration department of the immigration of South Korea was also pretty strict, but not as strict as the Philippines or Singapore. So I would put that probably somewhere in between, yeah. And then that would be Kazakhstan, probably in the last spot. But oh yeah, and the immigration of Thailand. Immigration of Thailand was not that strict, I would say, but I can tell you a couple of. It's actually a very long story, right? That's why I cannot really I cannot really spend a lot of time talking about each other. Probably that's another video, right? I could go probably immigration by immigration, country by country per video, yeah, so that we could discuss things in more details, more clearly, not in a very vague manner or way, if you will, yeah. So I can today in today's video I can tell you about the immigration of probably my experience with the immigration of Singapore, or probably with the immigration with probably how I've also dealt with immigration in the Philippines. Let's talk about the immigration of Singapore, right? Probably Philippines, in the next video. So when I arrived at the International Airport of Singapore, I think that was a couple of years ago. It was a beautiful day. I had been to Singapore about 2 or 3 times, yeah. But this time that I went a couple of years ago, I landed at the airport. I approached the immigration counters, right? And I was decently well dressed, I would say, yeah. And when I actually presented my documents, right, my passport, and the immigration officer was like, "What is the purpose of your visit to Singapore?" And I was like, I would like to visit the country for a couple of days, before I head back to my campus in Malaysia, because I was, studying obviously at the university in Kuala Lumpur. So he was like, "Okay, you go to Malaysia after Singapore." Yeah, that's where I'm based, yeah. And he was like, what is the address? You have to say the where you will be staying in Singapore. And I was like, I don't know yet, I'll go out. I'll be, looking at different hotels or hostels or motels or whatever, and compare and contrast the prices, and then I'm gonna, decide later on, depending on that. And he was like, no, you cannot enter Singapore like that. You take your passport one. I deny entry to you. And I'm like, come on, man. And I'm like, okay, I've got a friend that studies at National University of Singapore. Probably I'm gonna stay with him. And he was like, okay, what is the address of that university? And I'm like, I don't know. He's like, he actually returned my passport back to me again. He's like, you gotta know the exact address. And also, the next question that was also kind of crazy was that he was asking me where my visa was. And I'm like, bro, your government, the government of Singapore, actually announced a visa-free policy for the citizens of my country, and he was not aware of that. And I'm like, bro, you gotta know these facts, mate. You gotta know these recent developments or announcements. He was like, okay, and he actually asked a couple of other guys, and then was reassured that yes, we can actually enter Singapore visa free, yeah, if you are traveling to another third country on the way. So he was like, okay, and then he was like, what else? So he actually kind of gave me a lot of questions and whatnot. He was actually really concerned, as I was coming from a developing country, and he was like, well, do you really have the financial means to support your stay in the country? That was his concern, if you will, yeah. And I was like, yeah, I studied there. I'm not interested in this country at all whatsoever, with due respect. I just want to see it for a couple of days. And then after lots of questioning and stuff, I was finally let into the country, and I was pretty happy. But it paid off. Yeah, it was a very beautiful country, very, very developed. Yeah, very clean, very nice. I enjoyed my stay. And yeah, and I actually fully support what the immigration of Singapore actually did. It is awesome, right? Yeah, if I were an immigration officer working at the airport in Singapore, I would do the same. Sure, I would do the same, especially if you are questioning someone coming from a developing country. That has to be the SOPs, that has to be the standard operating procedures to make sure that there are no economic migrants that might overstay their visa and whatnot. All right, guys. So this is one of the series of immigration related videos that I might post later on in the future. Stay tuned, and thank you guys so much for watching, and take care.